Welcome back, Bolt fans, to another episode of Chargers Powder Hour, episode number 102. It has been a couple of weeks since we've all caught up. There's been a lot of news in the news about the Chargers' current situation, and I'm excited that we have a chance to finally get together and talk about all this. So, Colin Appel, Miles Raruka here. We are your co-host of Chargers Powder Hour. My dude, how you doing? How you feeling on this Martin Luther King Jr. Day?
Dude, this might be the week, man. This might be the week that we've been long awaiting for. Chargers set to meet with Jim Harbaugh today in Los Angeles. There's a lot that we got to get through regarding that situation. Don't know if today is the day the deal gets set in place. I know we're one interview away from the Rooney Rule, which is you have to interview two culturally significant individuals for in order to get a you get like a third round pick out of it, don't you?
I believe they already have Patrick Graham and Leslie Frazier.
You have to do it in person though. Leslie Frazier is the only one that's been in person so far.
Oh, gotcha.
So, because Twitter's been storming all about it, all about the Rooney Rule. But hey, at the end of the day, man, if today is the day, if this week is the week, it feels like we're getting closer and closer. Just a lot of reports out there, and it's hopeful times for this organization for sure, man. So
It is, man. I'm really excited to jump into all of it. As rough of a year as it's been, there are some silver linings on the horizon, not confirmed yet, but I think I'm on the same page as you, and I have a really good feeling about the Harbaugh situation. Now we have to see how the interview goes, and we'll get into all that. But before we dive into everything, it's been a couple weeks, so I hope you came prepared. What
I
are you
don't got
drinking?
anything on. I don't have
God
anything
damn it,
on me, man.
Miles!
Dude, it's a Monday afternoon, man. I'd
Look,
have to be a.
I'm putting on for the fucking team over here. All right,
All right, that's
I'm
fair.
holding this. My back is sore over the amount of episodes that I've been left alone to
That's
drink, but it's
fair.
all right.
I'm not
Okay.
doing like dry. I'm not doing dry January or anything. I have a fridge with some Coors Lights in it, so I mean, we can just say for the sake of conversation, I'm sipping on an ice cold Coors Light right now. I promise you, if this deal gets finalized, there's gonna be multiple Coors Light that goes down my system. So
Well, I'll have a constant buzz to ride all the way through it. Then I guess.
there we go. At least somebody can hold it down.
Right. I'm sipping on a Mr. Pineapple from Santan Brewing Company here in Chandler, Arizona. It is a Hefeweizen with pineapple juice, and it's really, really good. I think I've had it
That
before on
sounds,
the show, maybe once or twice.
that does
But
sound
it's
delicious.
quickly becoming one of my go-to beers. It's a perfect sports beer. You can drink 5 or 6 of these at the bar or on the couch watching NFL Sunday, which is what I did this weekend. So yeah, it's just a perfect beer to sip on, and it's not too heavy, but it's got a good taste. So that's what I'm sipping on. But all right, man, let's go ahead and get into everything that we need to get into. Just to recap it, because it has been, like I said, a couple of weeks since we've even caught up. I think the last game that we really got together for was the Broncos game, I want to say.
Something like
To,
that.
to
Yeah.
preview the game, we didn't even really get a chance to do a post game, and then at that point, we just kind of wrote it out to the end of
What was
the
there to talk about,
season.
man?
What
So
was there to talk about? Not a lot. This
exactly.
is kind of at the second that Herbert went down, and it was trending in the direction that, hey, we're probably not. Well, we're definitely not making the playoffs now. I think this has been on the forefront of everyone's mind, and it's gaining steam towards the Harbaugh situation and everything like that. But alongside that, I mentioned there are a couple of silver linings for this organization, and we kind of talked about this through some of the rougher patches of the season this year, with Staley, Telesco getting fired, just the frustrating results week after week. This is a chance for the Chargers organization to finally really legit hit the reset button on pretty much almost everything outside of ownership, which is not going to change anytime soon. It's a really good opportunity that they have, but they have to execute, and they have to go and get their guy, which clearly is Harbaugh. But outside of that, a lot of people are talking about what makes this job so attractive outside of Justin Herbert, outside of some of the pieces that they have on this roster. This is a team that's going to be drafting 5th overall in April. I think that's highly attractive to a coach coming in. Okay, we got some guys we're probably going to have to get rid of, trade, clear some cap space, that sort of thing. But we have a 5th overall pick. And with the team slated to pick ahead of the Chargers, there's going to be 1 or 2 or possibly even 3 of their top picks on their board available, which is just amazing news. When you think about the teams ahead of them that are probably going to go quarterback, we'll see what Chicago does, but obviously, the Commanders could take one. The Patriots could move up to take one. Uh, it's going to be really interesting. So I think that makes this job even more attractive. And they have, like I said, they have some guys that they can trade maybe for more draft capital. Maybe you shed some of these, older contracts if you're willing to trade a Bosa or a Mike Williams for higher draft capital. That's always an option as well. So either way, that is a big silver lining for this organization because you know that you're going to get a top tier draft talent to plug into either this offense or this defense next year.
Yeah, and think about if Matt Prater wasn't a scrub, we'd be in that 4 range with probably the best wide receiver talent that we've seen over the last 10 years coming into this draft, to Marvin Harrison Jr. just sitting there right for the taking. So shout out to Matt Prater for absolutely nothing. But yeah, what you said, piggybacking off that, this is the one of the biggest off seasons we've seen. It feels like, we started this channel 2 off seasons ago. It feels like a broken record that we've said that, but especially with the Harbaugh sweepstakes, you got Justin Herbert entering, his real big prime. It's time to, get him some weapons. It's time to, really just reset this roster. When I look at it right now, there's 3 guys that in my mind are definite for sure's on this roster come next year, and it's Herbert, Khalil Mack, Herbert, Thule, and Rashawn Slater. Those are really the 3 guys that essentially are kind of untouchable to me. Those are the guys that, the rebuild's going to start with those guys. You need a good edge rusher. You need at least one solid piece on the line. And of course you need the franchise QB.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a massive offseason. And like you mentioned, the cap situation is definitely hairy, but I think that, the lack of success from this team almost really helps a lot with those cap conversations that are going to happen this offseason. You have guys that are kind of no-brainers for, cuts on this team that are taking a lot of cap, and guys like, a Joey Bosa, most likely a Mike Williams, just those guys that, gave us their all for, all of their careers up to this point, but just haven't been able to stay on the field and just haven't been overly efficient when they have been on the field. So, I think regarding the cap space, it's not nearly as blown out of proportion as some people are saying. And I think we're 30 mil over. But when you look at the contracts of some of these guys that haven't been producing, in a few years here, it's kind of no-brainer decisions in my mind.
I 100% agree. I think if I'm a head coach interviewing for this job, I think the cap situation is not even a slight blemish on everything else. It's one thing that you're going to have to work around your first off season and first season coming into this job. But I think I think not an easy fix, but just, there's definitely a game plan to get around that. I don't think that's going to hinder the Chargers. If there's one thing that, a Harbaugh could provide would be, they're going to draft very well. And someone coming from the college game, you have an edge in that department as well with the talent he's been around and he's seen and all that, that he's witnessed at that level. So that's a plus if you can go and obviously lock that in. But yeah, I really think the cap situation is going to work itself out. This is a perfect opportunity for this organization to turn over and get younger. I think that's something that's kind of hindered them really for the entire Tom Telesco era, is kind of banking on some of these older vets that are a bit past their prime and paying them, guys like Thomas Davis, Eric Kendricks, the Khalil Mack gamble
If
obviously worked out.
if you're on this team and you played multiple years in our old jersey designs, it's time to have a discussion about you outside of Keenan Allen. That would be
Yes, which it's pretty much just him and Bosa at this point, right?
yeah. Okay, yeah. I guess technically, yeah. So, but I guess that I'm basically just adding Joey Bosa here now that I think about it. But yeah,
Yeah,
if
that's
it's
fair. I mean, look, this we just saw a Packers team yesterday
Sorry,
dismantle.
Derwin was in the old ones as well.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, and Mike Davis.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few out there, but it's basically it's time for a lot of these long-term fan favorites that we've developed over the years. It's time to really have real discussions about them, especially with this kind of cap situation that we're under.
Yeah, and it's look, we saw a Packers team yesterday dismantle a Cowboys team, and this is a Packers team that's the youngest in the league. Like all of their good, you know, weapons that they have, talents on defense, they're not paying these guys yet. Like, if you can hit a draft or even back-to-back drafts, it what it can do for your organization, for your roster. I mean, it can not flip it overnight because it takes 2 years and you have to hit back-to-back years, but it can just completely change the trajectory of your organization and what that can look like. I mean, every year we see multiple rookies produce and perform at a high level. Now it's a gamble trying to figure out which ones are going to do that, but it's a thing. So if you can hit on one or two drafts back to back, I mean, it's an opportunity for this organization to get younger, you know, to save some money, especially if you bring in a couple of dogs that are going to be starters for the next 4 seasons, and you don't got to pay them. Like you can totally reset and recalibrate your cap situation by that, and that's another big reason why I am full steam ahead on the Harbaugh train, and as I'm pretty sure every Chargers fan is at this point. Watching that Michigan game really kind of solidified, I think, everything the Chargers fans wanted to see. This is a clear cut, proven guy. I mean, he's one of the great all time coaches at this point, in my opinion, at the college level. Obviously, he's only had a small taste at the NFL level, but he's produced even in that time. So yeah, that's a plus to winning out on those sweepstakes if they're able to do that. But yeah, at number 5, while we're on the subject of what that could look like, what are your 3 best options at 5th overall?
So just real quick, I want to go back to that Harbaugh train real quick. Yeah, we're talking about a
Okay.
guy that when he first got hired by the 49ers, I mean, he took a 6-10 team into a 13-3 NFC Championship team the very next season. Then he went on to go like 12-4, 12-4 the next 2 seasons. And, I think it was an interview with John, his brother, that said one thing that he brings to NFL teams is his building roster, his roster abilities. Like he knows how to scout. He knows how to find these guys in the later rounds that, we've became so accustomed to, it feels like finding, but hopefully, being able to build off what we find and continue to build that roster around them. So, but yeah, obviously when it comes to drafting, that's all going to start at number 5 for us this year. So my 3 best options at 5, I think it's, for those of you that have been really familiar with Chargers Twitter, I think it's probably a consensus most top 3. I think my number 1, I know there's a lot of people that like Neighbors, but I actually like Brock Bowers more than Neighbors for number 1. I really love what Bowers, represents, and not only the pass game, but, he's a physical dude that can get dirty down blocking some dudes. He's a another Georgia tight end not named Trey McKitty. So I think that he comes from a tight end factory. I mean, we saw Kyle Pitts is from Florida, but never mind. I really liked what he's shown through college. It's really like getting Phillip Rivers his Antonio Gates in my eyes. So just getting that kind of guy that's going to be with Herbert, throughout his whole career, like they attempted to get in the first round last year. I think that's definitely an area to look at. Obviously, the number 2 would be Malik Neighbors, and this is all with the account that I do believe that Marvin Harrison Jr. is gone at 5.
Yep.
If not, he's like number 1 ahead of really anybody. So Malik Neighbors at my 5. Loved his film at LSU, downfield threat. I mean, what more can you say? He's a wide receiver 1 in most classes. So, and then I think 3, I'm probably going to go Romo Dunes. I just think getting out of the top 5 or having a pick at 5, and if we stick there at 5, don't trade down and try to get some more draft capital. Sticking it out at 5 in this kind of weapon class with the depth of the receivers in this class, I think that you really just can't go wrong. I think your safest option is to get Herbert, that guy.
Yeah, I mean those are my exact three as well. I actually put Odunze above Bowers, so to me it's a Dunze or Neighbors, and you can't go wrong either way. That would be the direction I would go. It's funny how I will say on Brock Bowers, it is funny how in the last, I wouldn't even say a couple of weeks, probably just the last week, how that narrative is already flipping, and I'm seeing stuff on Chargers Twitter that now people want to stay away from him. They're not sure if they want to use a 5th overall pick on a tight end, given the fact that I think I saw something of like the last 12 or 14 tight ends taken in the first round, and all of them are just kind of like meh. Like they're not bad, but they're definitely not in the upper echelon of tight ends either. When you think of like some of the best tight ends, Mark Andrews, obviously Travis Kelce, George Kittle, those guys aren't all, you know, first round top 10 picks. Those are just guys that you're able to find and develop and end up being really, really good players. So I get that side of it. I just think with Brock Bowers, this is more of a generational pick than anything. I think the tight end position is a position that does fall under like some false hype leading up to there's always a top tight end in every class, and it's always kind of the same narrative of, oh my God, like people are drooling over him. Last year it was the kid from Buffalo, Kincaid, Dalton Kincaid. He was supposed to be this, oh my God, like he's going to go top 10. And then as the draft process went on, and as the mock drafts kind of sharpened up, he was now on like the 15 to 25 range, and so I get it. Maybe it's a little early, and we have to go through the entire draft process, but I think Brock Bowers is a pretty safe bet. I would
And
not be upset at all if they went with him at 5th overall. He just wouldn't be my first choice.
yeah, and I think that there's a lot of potential on the board to, trade back into that 9 or 10 range and still be able to get a guy like that. Who says we can't
True.
squeak another second or third rounder out of a team, move back a few spots, and still be able to get a guy like that? But as for
Yeah.
Odunze and Neighbors, I wouldn't expect them to fall out of probably the top 8. So it's definitely kind of one of those things on what you would rather prefer. I just think weapon in general, and maybe I am slightly biased because just with Georgia's success, it feels like I've heard Brock Bowers' name, the last 2 college football seasons
Yeah.
ringing in my ear. So,
The one thing I
it's
will
a guy that I've
say,
been able to watch a lot of. So,
yeah, the one thing I do think people are underestimating about Bauer's game is his blocking ability and what that could do for a run game that desperately needs to find some sort of success. I mean, that's evident at this point. So, that is an aspect of his game that I find attractive. Um, but either way, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it has to be a weapon. A lot of people might roll their eyes and say, really, another wide receiver in the top 5, top 10. But given what we saw this year on the field, no one else is going to help Herbert besides Keenan Allen. That's about it. I mean, Josh Palmer is coming along nicely. I think he's getting better each and every year, and he's a nice wide receiver. I think he's probably in the upper echelon of wide receiver 3s in this league. But the second you kind of start to put him up, two, in that 1 or 2 category, it's just, a lot of teams don't have a good third corner, and that's what they have maybe 1 or 2 or a good tandem, and if you're that one of those top 2 guys, like you're gonna, it's on, like the competition level goes up a notch, and you're not, going one on one against a guy that's fighting for snaps or getting plugged in certain packages and whatnot. So I think he's a solid third option. I think Keenan's a solid 1 option. I'm still excited about QJ's development. I know some people might roll their eyes at that statement, but I really am. I really think, uh, when I was there in April and when we drafted him in Kansas City, I mean, I was hoping he would burst out of onto the scene and be that stud wideout right away. But every path is different, and I really think another offseason with Herbert, build some more trust, get on the same page. I think we're going to see a more comfortable, more confident Quentin Johnson next year. So they can go out and get a Neighbors or an Odunze. Now you're looking at a core of Keenan, Neighbors / Odunze, Palmer, and Quentin Johnston. I'll take that any day of the week. They got some speed, they got some athleticism, they got a Hall of Famer, just Mr. Consistent going to show up. That's not a bad place to start, in my opinion. I mean, I think if there were a elite offensive line talent, that could be attractive, but I just don't think there is this year like there have been in years past. So I'm going weapon all the way.
And one other thing I want to add, we're totally on board with weapons here, but you also have a bunch of great receivers and dudes like Xavier Worthy, Troy Franklin. There's a long list of names just off the top of my head that I can think of that are going to be available in those second, third rounds. So it is kind of one of those things that I think if we don't go weapon in the first, it's not that it's necessarily not going to be addressed. It's just that this is such a deep class that I think that there's potential to find a lot of those second day, third day kind of guys that can really make an impact. And I did see the other day the list of free agent wide receivers this upcoming offseason. There's some very intriguing names on there. Guys like Gabe Davis, Marquise Brown, some speed threats. Calvin Ridley is probably my favorite name on the list. Michael Pittman. I don't know if you guys have seen, but Michael Pittman and
Michael Pittman
Justin
in a
Herbert.
Chargers uniform would make me cream my pants. I love
And
Michael Pittman.
him and Herbert have a relationship. There's a
Mm.
video of them like fishing. You know what
Fishing
video I'm
off
talking about?
off a pier. Yeah.
Yeah. That's Michael Pittman's. When he was at USC and Herbert was at Oregon. So T. Higgins, Mike Evans. Those are guys that I think if Telesco was still around would definitely be top of the list kind of guys, knowing the kind of frame that they
Yeah.
like in their receivers. But yeah,
It'll be
a
interesting
lot
to
of
see
a lot of really
how they
fun
approach free agency.
options. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think. Let me ask you this: what's one position group throughout the draft that you would like to see addressed more than anything? I mean, offensive or defensive? What would you like to see? I mean, obviously, first round, they should and have to go weapon, I think. But throughout the draft, what would you like to see them kind of slowly invest in?
It's as much as I want to go with like a position group, obviously, DBs are extremely important, your defensive linemen, guys like that. Really, I think a underlying story for me is still going to be on that offense side of the ball. It's going to be a running back in this draft class. One of those, I think we need to really invest fourth round or higher running back this year. There's a few names, Braylon Allen gets thrown out a lot. Ray Davis from Kentucky. I like Donovan Mitchell. Not Donovan Mitchell, Jesus. Donovan Edwards from Michigan. Unfortunately, just announced he was going back to school today. Donovan Mitchell, I'm not sure. I'm not sure Donovan Mitchell would be a hell of a running back. He's probably like a slot receiver kind of guy, but running back. I think finding that guy. We all know that this was most likely Eckler's last season, and Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller have shown exactly what behind him. So being able to close out the games in the trenches is huge, especially if we bring in Harbaugh. He's a guy that's gonna want to build up the trenches and win it on the ground. So Corum's another name that I wouldn't leave off that list, especially if Harbaugh is the hire. So
for sure, yeah, that would be that would pick up steam very quickly if Harbaugh is announced. For me personally, I would love to see them. I look at some of these. I'm watching some of these playoff teams over the last couple of days, and the last few weeks, even just playoff teams that have clinched already, but also still fighting for positioning. It just seems like every playoff team, which AKA every good team in the league, they have a strong defensive line, or just they win the battle of scrimmage on one side of the ball. I mean, the great teams dominate the battle of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, offensive line and defensive line. But one theme that I've kind of noticed is that all these teams have at least one. They got one of the two. whether it's a Detroit team like last night, who just watching that offensive line cook was like, wow, like that's impressive. That run game benefits from it tremendously. Jared Goff benefits from it tremendously. And then there's other teams, that dominate the defensive front. Teams like Baltimore, teams like San Francisco. It's just watching it from a third party perspective. It's just like, man, that's one thing I wish we had. That's one area I wish we excelled in, um, on one side of the ball. Cause I think it's kind of 50-50 on either side right now, depending on the opponent and the matchup. You could lose both of them, which we saw that happen this year, or you might, win one side and it's a battle to the end. But I would just like to see them improve at the line of scrimmage. I almost said offensively, but I really think that interior D line room has been a weak spot over the last probably 4 or 5 seasons.
Yeah,
Um, injuries have also affected that group hard, but that's one area I think I would like to really see them invest in. I still like the jury's still out on guys like Tito Agpania. So, that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, running back as well. I totally agree. They have to figure out something there. But I also think if there's one position that they're primed to grab from free agency, like I would look running back free agency first before I look probably at any other thing. Just to
true.
see if you can get you know, a vet on a team friendly deal that can still produce.
Yeah, I think interior of either of the lines can be improved. I like guys like Cedric Van Pran, Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon's been a name that's been thrown out a lot for
Joe
center.
Alt.
Obviously, we're gonna be looking for that replacement for Corey Linsley most likely, and then yeah, defensive tackle Tavondre Sweat from Texas is one name that I like a lot. But really beefing up both sides of that line is huge. And it's really a loaded question to ask what we really want for in the draft right now. Because if you think about it, this team has a lot of holes. I mean, like you can't be mad if they go like let's say that we
Yeah.
go like Kool-Aid in the top 10. It's
Yeah.
it's hard to be upset about something like that because there's areas all over the field that need help. So I think either way, it's gonna be probably a best player available situation in most rounds that we see.
Yeah. Which everything that we're talking about could greatly, I mean, the trajectory could go through the roof on all these things if the Chargers can land Jim Harbaugh. I mean, that's really what we're here to talk about today. I did want to get caught up on everything else that's gone down in the last couple weeks since we haven't had a chance to really express our opinions or our opinions or any of that stuff. So, but the elephant in the room, the 10,000 pound elephant in the room, is Jim Harbaugh interviewing with the Chargers today, possibly right as we were speaking. I mean, it's 2:45 on the West Coast, or excuse me, 1:45 on the West Coast. They're probably sitting down together like right now, which is crazy to think about, or pretty damn close to it. The Chargers obviously still have to play out some of their interview process, but they could this interview is either going to expedite things pretty much overnight, where we could see reports as early as tomorrow morning or overnight saying, hey, strong sources here saying this is probably going to happen. Like, to me, this interview today is really about the Chargers giving Jim not complete, obviously, ownership, but just majority control to do exactly what he wants to draft the way he wants, coach the way he wants, to you know have the personnel he wants. I mean, everything down to a T. I think that's all this interview is for. The signs have been there for months. Harbaugh has said publicly he wants to come back to the NFL at some point. He has unfinished business at this level. If the Chargers don't get him this cycle, some other NFL team is going to get him. I don't know if it'll be this cycle, but he will coach in the NFL again. I am set on that fact. So whether it's this season, next season, 3 seasons, 4 seasons, 5 seasons from now, I think he is going to coach again at this level. And this is either going to be one thing that this organization can look back on in 5 years and say, we got him. That was our Saban. This is someone that can come in overnight and change everything that you've known. This is not a Brandon Staley and Anthony Lynn and Mike McCoy or even a Norv Turner or even a Marty Schottenheimer. Like, this is someone 100,000% proven. He is a winner. He is a program builder, a changer of culture. He wins. He does it his way and he wins. And if I'm in that meeting, if I'm the Spanos brass in that meeting, I'm giving him the keys to the fucking castle. Why wouldn't you? Because someone else will if you don't. So why wouldn't you be
You
like,
have to.
whatever you want, Jim,
Blank
whatever you
check.
want, blank
Blank
check,
check.
anything you want. Like,
I hope
yes,
Justin. I hope
100%.
Justin Herbert's in that meeting room as well. It doesn't. I don't think it gets better for a invite than to have your franchise quarterback sitting there, being able to
Yeah,
talk to
and
each
like
other. So
that's another thing that's tying him to this job. Like, and any other coach that's interviewing is like, I want to be a successful head coach. I don't want to just be a one and done and go back to my play calling duties. I want to build something. I want to be the next up and coming guy or the next coach to break into the scene. You need a quarterback to do that. So that's no secret. Everyone is aware of that. And it's no secret that Harbaugh wants Justin Herbert. I mean, what other opening, would he have a chance to come in and really build overnight? Even if even the Dallas situation, even when McCarthy gets fired, whether today or tomorrow or whenever that will be, walking into a situation like a Dallas or an LA is, to me, like a no-brainer. Like, take the quarterback, take the organization that you're familiar with, that's going to give you the keys. Having to deal with Jerry, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
who want that?
exactly. Like, I think it's so clear to everyone on the outside that this is such a fit, and it's basically just how the Chargers are going to fuck this up. Is kind of almost like some of the narrative that I've been hearing over the last, because the interest is there, the fit is there. Get it done.
It feels like if it doesn't work, it's on the Chargers end. Like they're the ones that fumbled this bag. I think Harbaugh's in. He looks at the one of the most talented QBs that we've ever seen, with a roster with so much potential
Yeah.
elsewhere. You live in such a big market in LA. He's gonna. I'm assuming today in their meeting they're gonna talk about GMs that he would want to be comfortable working with. Like
A
they're gonna
thousand
give him the
percent.
reins.
A
They're gonna give
thousand
him the
percent.
reins,
And
and they
you
should.
say whoever you want, Jim, we will go and get. Because guess
I
what?
mean,
I don't think it's a bad. I don't think you need another GM for 11 years. Like, you go and get whoever Harbaugh wants. Worst case scenario, let's say Harbaugh gives us like 5 or 6 years. Maybe we win a Super Bowl. Maybe we get to the brink of it. If that were to ever happen and it goes down the toilet, then you just fire the GM and start over. Like, to me, in this situation, and this is almost what John Spanos talked about in that presser, was like, it's not necessarily like you have to get one before the other, but in this situation, it's almost you have to get like Harbaugh is the Moby Dick. Like, you have to go
Moby
catch
what?
that. Pause. You have to go catch that fucking whale and reel it in, because someone else is gonna get it, and two, this is your chance. This is your opportunity. They have never, I mean, they outside of the Tom Brady BS that, it was us or Tampa and we lost out on those sweepstakes. They haven't ever had a chance to really like land somebody this big, player or coach, regardless. Like, this is I don't want to say once in a lifetime opportunity, but once in a long time
It
opportunity
kind
to
of is.
really land a generational coach that overnight could take you to the pinnacle of the sport. So if I'm in that meeting, it's whatever he wants. Yes, sir, you got it. Like, because it would also be just the ultimate testament to the fans of, hey, we're invested. We hear you. We care. We're not just some owners that want to make a buck and run this thing like a company or like a business. make sure our margins are nice and fat. No, like we're going to spend, we're going to do what it takes to win. This is the first serious step to that. And it would also have huge trickle effects, you know? Think about, like we just mentioned, the draft. Some of them, I mean, he just is coming off of winning the national championship, which means he has some of the best talented players in the country already at his disposal. You know, that if they're available in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round, like it's a no brainer. Like, so there's kind of the immediate benefit there, and then there's also just think about all the vets that are going to want to come play for Jim Harbaugh on a team friendly deal. Maybe they don't have a ring yet. Maybe it's year 10, 11, 12. Maybe they're still producing. Hey, I'm gonna go see what this Harbaugh action's about. Like, I want to go play for Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, like, and LA. I mean, everything is there, man. They have to. They like this is how big this is. It goes beyond just the X's and O's and all of that. I mean, this is a chance to culturally be relevant in Los Angeles and across the country.
Yeah, I mean, he never lost under 11 games as a Niners coach, and he didn't work with a quarterback like Justin Herbert in San Francisco. He worked with Kaepernick and Alex Smith, but never a guy of this level. So I just think what he would be able to build around Herbert, and then what Herbert would be able to elevate that roster to, it's special, man. It's like it's kind of, you almost want to use the word dynasty like. Probably too soon on that, but it's definitely the biggest step towards that kind of a dynasty that we could look to build with this guy coach.
I mean, who was the last really big NFL coach that, like, the hiring itself, like, shifted the league or at least the conference or for sure the division? You know, like,
I
I
mean,
know
you
there's been
want
some
to
big
say
names.
Andy Reid to Kansas
That's
City, but
exactly who I was going to go. But I mean, yes, there's been some big names that have either come up from the college game.
it's not
Urban
like he panned
Meyer,
out
they
his
didn't
very
pan
first
out.
year.
And even then, when they came up, you know, Kingsbury or Urban Meyer or whoever I mean, Sean McVay actually is probably in that conversation and probably is the answer of like the last guy to do it because that was more recent than Andy Reid. But yeah, like I think of those two guys, you know, this is that type of hire if you're able to land it. You know, this is not just, oh my God, like this is bigger than a Ben Johnson hire ever could be or ever would be. And that's no slight to Ben Johnson. I think he's going to be a great coach. I still have him high on my list if things don't pan out with the Harbaugh sweepstakes, but this is just different, man. This type of hire is different. And you can feel it already as the steam has been, you know, that has been gaining steam. And I think this fan base is ready to explode within the next week if things continue to trend in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, this is it, man. This is what's going to dictate this franchise for the next, likely for a majority of Herbert's career. So,
Yeah.
if it's not Harbaugh, you have to think of other names. Vrabel's a guy that I like almost as much as Harbaugh, to be quite honest with you. Just
I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
what he's been able to do in Tennessee. If it's not Harbaugh or Vrabel for me, like you mentioned, a Ben Johnson
So,
Ben
all right,
Johnson could be a phenomenal
pause,
coach.
'cause this is my next question. So let me
All
just
right.
get this out because it's
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about. If the Harbaugh, like, let's say, depressing as it would be, let's say we don't land Harbaugh. Let's say he goes back to Michigan because right now I think it's Chargers or Michigan. I don't think. I mean, he might listen if another NFL team gives him a
Yeah.
call. Why wouldn't he? But I think it's either, hey, I go coach Justin Herbert, get exactly what I want from the Spanos family, or I just come back to Michigan and I wait maybe another year or two until the next best situation opens up. So I don't think any other NFL team is really in on him as much as the Chargers are. But
Mhm.
let's say if that falls through, who is your plan B and your plan C? Like in
Vrabel. I
order.
mean, it's Vrabel and then probably Ben Johnson. And
That's
really
yeah.
outside of those three, I'm not really happy. If it's not one of those three guys, especially those first, well, it's especially Harbaugh. and then I can settle for Vrabel, and then if it's not Vrabel, I can settle for Ben Johnson. So, but
Yep.
outside of those three, man, that's yeah.
That's
Outside of those
exactly
three,
how I feel. Yeah, I think Ben Johnson at worst is going to be the head coach of the Chargers. I think, barring a disappointing Jim Harbaugh run, and maybe if they interview Vrabel, maybe it's not a fit, or I don't know why it wouldn't be, but let's just say it's not for some reason, and he gets to go somewhere else. I think Ben Johnson's just right there waiting to be plucked. I mean, again, the advantage the Chargers have and really have had for the last three coaching changes is they have the quarterback situation figured out. That immediately sends you to the top of the list as far as attractive jobs that are available. And so that component has been there even for as long as I can remember, dating back to Breeze and Rivers. So that part is huge. That's always going to make this. I mean, Ben Johnson, yes, he wants to be a head coach, but if it were up to him to go to Carolina or go to LA or go to Washington or go to LA, like that's a no brainer. So I want to say the Chargers almost have the pick of the litter because they kind of do.
I think so too. It's got to be the best looking job destination that honestly it's probably been available in a while. It's not too often that a team with the QB like Justin Herbert has a vacancy like this. So especially for Harbaugh, man. I mean, you have to kind of look at years going down the road. It's like who of these, really top end elite prospects, coaches' seats are really going to be warm enough that Harbaugh would even, have to come in for an interview, let alone they fire their own coaches. So, I think that if he's going to make this change, it feels like, this is the time. Like this is the perfect opportunity. He didn't have the connections that he has now when he interviewed for, like the Denver job or when he interviewed for the Minnesota job in the past few off seasons. It feels like if there's a match made in heaven, it's this off season right now for this team.
I agree, man. So we'll see. It's going to be a very interesting couple of days, and we will definitely make sure to record as soon as we hear the news, or as soon as we can after the news breaks. But yeah, because it could unload an entire second wave of this coaching search. Let's say if over the next couple of days it's Harbaugh, Harbaugh, Harbaugh. Worst case scenario, it doesn't happen. Then it just opens up kind of the second wave of, all right, let's get Vrabel in here, let's get Johnson in here. I'm sure they'll do their due diligence on Belichick. I don't see why you wouldn't, but I also just don't think that's the best fit
I'm
with
extremely out on
where this
I'm
organization's
extremely out
at.
on Belichick.
Yeah, the biggest reason why I'm out on Belichick more than anything is because I just think, look, it's a quarterback driven league. It's an offensive driven league. Having a defensive head coach, I think there's successful examples of it, obviously, but they're few and far between. There are more examples of successful offensive minded head coaches because of the stability that it brings to an offense, to a quarterback. You know, you can have the best defensive minded head coach in the league, but guess what? You're still going to have to find an offensive coordinator every couple of years because even when you find a good one, they're just going to get plucked.
True.
So that to me, I'm kind of out on defensive coaches, which again, I know Vrabel's a defensive guy, but he's one of the few that I think can be an effective defense. I mean,
I think
there's
Vrabel's just shown so much from a leadership standpoint with that
yeah,
Tennessee team. And
cultural
just the
leadership. I
the
100%
results on
agree.
paper versus the rosters that they have is
Yeah, I mean,
insane.
there's
Put it
like
like
Robert
this.
Saleh. I think is a good coach, but defensive minded. Obviously Vrabel, McDermott up in Buffalo, like defensive guy, good coach. So those types of guys can be successful, but when you look at when you just look at some of the best teams in the league, their offenses, the minds that they have running those offenses, Sean McVay, Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, Shane Steichen. I mean, look what he did with Indianapolis this year with a Gardner Minshew, not even Anthony Richardson. So that to me is why I'm kind of hesitant and kind of out on Belichick. Not on Vrabel because he's a defensive guy, but among other things with Belichick, that's a big reason.
For sure. I think a lot of us as fans are really on the same page in that aspect that we know that it's time for the Spanishes to put up or shut up.
I mean,
Like
it's
this is
Harbaugh or bust. Whoever they get. I mean, let's say it's hard. Like,
Harbaugh's the only person that feels like everyone is universally like extremely
yeah,
happy with.
because let's say we have to settle for a Ben Johnson, which I would not really be mad at all about because I know we're probably going to have the number one offense in the league next year. So that would be cool. But it's just the letdown of what could, like the lingering effects of if they don't get Jim Harbaugh. They got bailed out in 2020 with the Brady sweepstakes because little did we know that would turn into us drafting Herbert, and who fucking cares about Tom Brady? I mean, yes, he won a Super Bowl in Tampa, but that's not a given. You know, he complete different situation, complete different division. I mean, that's neither here nor there, but this could have lingering effects, I believe, if for at least the fan base, maybe not the players, maybe not inside the building, but for sure the fan base, if they're not able to get Harbaugh and we have to settle for somebody else.
Yeah, very true. I think that, there's would be some divide within the fan base that can easily be solved if they just nail this Harbaugh interview and, get this thing done. So,
I agree, man. Real quick, just a list of other head coaches that have had an interview with the Chargers. That have completed a first round interview. Leslie Frazier, I believe that one was yesterday. Mike McDonald, the Baltimore defense coordinator. Steve Wilkes, San Francisco's defense coordinator. Todd Monken, Baltimore's OC. So already a big Baltimore connection there with interviewing both their coordinators. The Raiders defense coordinator Patrick Graham, who did a really good job with that unit this year. Kellen Moore, Giff Smith, and then obviously today Jimmy Harbaugh. So that is the list of coaches they've interviewed so far for the gig. Not not some bad names on there at all. You know, I know none of them are in the conversation that we just had about who our top candidates would be, but I mean, quality coaches throughout that list. I think Steve Wilkes is one of those highly respected guys across the league. Same with Leslie Frazier. Obviously, Baltimore has done a fantastic job on both sides of the ball this year, and you know, giving Kellen Moore and Giff Smith an opportunity to, you know, have their pitches for the job.
yeah, I mean, congrats to everyone that's interviewed, but like we said, if the name's not Harbaugh, it's not gonna go well. So other than
It'll
Vrabel or
just
Ben
be
Johnson,
it'll
but
be a major buzzkill.
it'll be
Uh,
a downer if the name's not Harbaugh.
yeah, it'll be a major buzzkill. It'll be kind of like it's just like that moment where you're ready for someone to hit a 30-foot 3-pointer to go up by like 10 points. You're like the whole building's waiting to erupt, and it's like you see the ball in the air, it's online, goes in and out, and it's like oh, like it's just air kind of let out of the building for a minute. Um, but yeah, I mean, I it just makes sense. It's the right move. It's again, I think what you said about pretty much the whole fan base being on the same page. That's rare, not just with the Chargers fan base, but really in just fan bases in sports in general. It's pretty rare that everyone is kind of like it's like a no brainer. It's like, all right, yeah, like how are you going to argue against that? And I think that's where we're at right now. So right now, I think it's pretty civil on Chargers Twitter, but if this doesn't go through, we could see some very dramatic takes from,
Like usual,
yeah,
per
even
usual.
maybe even more than usual though, because of the
True.
whole situation that's been building for the last week or so.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of speculation going on, and I want this thing to get done. I want the pen to be on the paper, and I want to start looking forward to that number 5 pick because right now I'm looking forward to when this
yeah,
GM, when this head coach gets hired, and I'm ready to get this offseason started, and it's gonna start, with that
I
hiring
believe I saw today Jim Harbaugh is plus 135 on becoming the Chargers head coach on DraftKings. So might not hurt to go put like 20, $50 down on that. Because that could be a double whammy once
for
Harbaugh's
sure,
announced. You might make some money off that.
for sure, man. So really looking forward to what this week holds. And just this news that I'm probably gonna wake up every day looking forward to. So
We're in for one, man. These next couple of days, when I say are going to be waking up, refreshing Twitter overnight. Did anything happen? All the talk show, media talk shows, sports talk shows over the next couple of days. This interview is really going to set things in motion. And yeah, just buckle up. That's all I can say.
should be fun, man.
Right on, man. Well, with that, we will go ahead and get out of here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning back into episode number 102 of Chargers Powder Hour. Let's go, Jim Harbaugh. We're waiting for you to be a Charger. Bolt up.
Please.
Peace out.